There is a silence that weighs heavily on the heart when life tears someone we love away from us. It is a silence that feels endless, a void no human word can fill. A mother who loses a child carries an invisible wound, deep and raw, opening again with every dawn. It is as if the world keeps turning, but within her, time has stopped. Absence seeps into every corner of the house, into every simple gesture of daily life, and even prayer seems to dissolve into a closed sky, offering no reply. In this barren land, the heart learns, through tears and heavy breaths, to live with the feeling that God has stepped away, that He no longer listens. Yet God's love never abandons, even when it feels far. Sometimes His answer does not come through logic or clarity, but slips softly through the veil of sleep, like a whisper almost too light to notice. To some, dreams are nothing but the wanderings of a weary mind. But for a soul that waits, they can be an altar where the Holy Spirit finds a way through. That is how Carlo appeared to his mother, not as a vague memory, but as a living presence, restoring, consoling. He became a bridge between absence and promise, between grief and hope. In that moment, she understood that death does not have the last word, because the life of one who loves God is stronger than any grave. Carlo was a reflection of the risen Christ Himself, comforting his own with the certainty that the story does not end at the tomb. For his mother, the dream was not an escape from pain, but a meeting place where eternity touched humanity. And this opens the greater question: how much of our dreaming is merely the echo of emotional need, and how much is a window opened by God to realign our path? This is the question that lingers, echoing in the soul of anyone searching for meaning. Perhaps the secret is not to chase an immediate answer, but to remain open to the possibility that heaven still speaks, even when we believe silence has won. Sometimes, it is in the fragility of a dream that eternity chooses to touch the earth. The first miracle unfolded quietly, like a seed sprouting in the stillness of night. When doctors declared there was no chance of life from her womb, hope seemed sealed shut. The word end felt final, as though every door had been locked. It was in that time of resignation that Carlo appeared to his mother in a dream, bringing news that defied biology. He did not announce only children, he announced life itself, in a place the world had marked with sterility. The arrival of Francesca and Michelle was more than the joy of family. It was a sign that what seemed over could still bloom again. It was not only the overturning of medical predictions, but the breath of a new beginning no one dared expect. Sterility was not the final word. It was only a veil, hiding the story that had yet to unfold. The surprise of twins was God's way of showing that He does not simply return what was lost in the same measure, but pours out in abundance, doubling His gift, like an echo of resurrection resounding within the intimacy of a home. The scene is like a parched field suddenly revealing a hidden river beneath the soil. Ground once thought barren becomes fertile, filled with promise and beauty. This is God's logic. Where human eyes see only death, He makes room for life. And perhaps the deepest part of this miracle was not merely the birth of the twins, but the certainty that hope can never be cancelled by human decree. Even when reason insists all is finished, God finds a way to surprise us, reminding us that no human sentence can ever close the book of life. The words Carlo spoke to his mother in that dream were simple, brief, yet eternal. "Don't worry, Mama." Small words, easy to overlook, but at that moment they carried the weight of a bomb. A heart torn apart by grief, suffocated by absence, found comfort not in explanations, but in the tenderness of a son still caring for her beyond death. That night, it was as if new breath entered her being, restoring the air pain had stolen. The dream was not cold information, it was a healing presence. Those words broke through the grip of suffering that sought to paralyze, reminding her that motherhood had not ended with Carlo, but would unfold in ways she never imagined. Pain, once final, gave way to a crack of light. Hope, buried alongside memory, began to stir again. The comfort she received was not only the promise of children, it was the living reminder that love remains active, even when the body is no longer here. Those words were like a lamp lit in a dark room, casting light before dawn. They did not erase every shadow, but revealed they were not absolute. Grief did not lose its weight, but it was reshaped. A son's word became a lifeline, something his mother could cling to so as not to be lost in the abyss of longing. Perhaps this is the deepest truth. When everything feels shattered, sometimes one simple word is enough to restore the trust that the story continues, and that life has not been cut short, only transformed. Many dismiss dreams as nothing more than fragments of a tired mind, fading illusions swept away with morning light. This view reduces dreams to mere biology, ignoring the possibility that they sometimes carry what the waking heart is too guarded to hear. Carlo's mother's experience shows just that. When grief had closed her heart, hope found its way through the night, in the place where reason could no longer raise walls. To ignore this dimension is to turn away from signs reaching out to us. How many times does a word, an image, or an encounter within a dream remain alive in us through the day, asking not to be forgotten? The mind may try to explain, but the soul knows there is more at work. To dismiss such experiences as passing illusions risks throwing away messages that could redirect our steps, opening paths we could not see while awake. It is like leaving unopened letters, believing nothing important could be inside. But when opened, they reveal truths capable of shaping destinies. Antonia's dream was not a trick of longing, but an invitation to trust something greater than human understanding. It showed that revelation does not always arrive with thunder and spectacle. Sometimes it comes quietly, in the simple language of night visions that refuse to fade from the heart. In one of her most striking nights, Antonia dreamed of Carlo bringing to light something hidden. It was not merely the memory of a beloved son, but a call to look deeper. In the dream, Carlo pointed her toward a secret, a spiritual testament stored on his computer, words left not for the moment, but for their appointed time. When his mother finally found that document, each line seemed to echo what had been revealed in the dream. The impact was profound, for it was more than the discovery of a text. It was an encounter with the mature awareness of a young man already walking toward eternity. What struck everyone most was that Carlo spoke of death not as an end, but as a natural passage, something woven into his destiny. His calm before what so many fear revealed the depth of his faith and the clarity of his mission. While many avoid even thinking about the finality of life, he embraced it with simplicity, as someone who already saw beyond this earthly existence. For his mother, this revelation felt like crossing a border, realizing her son was not lost, but had left behind a spiritual map, a clear path pointing toward heaven. Carlo's legacy was not limited to memories or family stories. The true treasure was in that hidden testament, where his words remained alive, waiting for the right moment to shine. It was like a flame kept quietly inside a lantern, ready to glow brighter when the darkness grew deeper. When Antonia found those words, she realized her son's greatest inheritance was not material but spiritual, capable of touching hearts across times and places. The dream was no accident. It was an invitation to uncover the secret of a life already united with eternity, still evangelizing through the silent power of his words. There is a subtle danger many hearts face, believing that spirituality is measured by appearances, by exposure, by public recognition. In today's world, it seems faith must be displayed, commented on, shared, as if its worth depended on the number of eyes watching, rather than the quiet depth of its roots. That illusion can turn the sacred into spectacle, reducing the mystery of faith to performance. For a mother who watched her son depart so young, that distinction became unmistakably clear. Carlo did use the internet, yes, but never as a stage for himself. His presence was not about showing who he was, but about declaring to whom he belonged. He turned ordinary tools into instruments of evangelization, never letting the spotlight distract him from simplicity. The greatness of his mission was not in visibility, but in purity of intention. And it was precisely because he sought no glory that his message spread so powerfully, reaching people who might never have heard of him otherwise. When Carlo left, it was through his mother that the mission kept echoing. She became the living channel of a call that did not end with death, but found new strength in sharing his story. This reveals something essential. Authentic spirituality never forces itself. It blooms quietly, without noise. It is like a seed germinating underground, hidden from sight, but in its time breaking through the soil to become a strong, generous tree. So it is with faith. It does not rest on performance, but on the fertile silence that prepares fruit for the world. Francesca and Michel came as much more than children. They came as living signs of a promise that multiplied and expanded beyond what Antonia ever imagined. They were not only continuity of life, but reflections of a love that refused to be cut short. Every gesture, every smile, every breath carried Carlo's memory, along with the certainty that life continues, even after a loss that felt final. Their presence transformed both the home and the mother's heart, creating a symphony of hope where there had once been only silence and emptiness. The birth of the twins revealed a profound truth. God does not simply return what was lost. He gives back in abundance, multiplying grace in unexpected ways. Every moment with them reminded her that the pain of loss does not have to mark the end of the story, but can open the way for a new chapter, rich with meaning and life. The arrival of Francesca and Michel showed that the love that departed with Carlo did not vanish. It was reborn into something tangible, felt in every touch, every glance, every laugh that filled the once quiet rooms. It is like a fisherman casting his net, expecting just a few fish, only to be overwhelmed by a catch far beyond imagination. That is the nature of God's work, surprising, generous, overflowing. Francesca and Michel are not just children. They are living witnesses that hope is still alive, that God's promises are fulfilled in ways that defy human logic. In the silent multiplication of grace, life proves that love does not disappear. It blossoms in new hearts, turning absence into presence and sorrow into a joy that spreads. God's timing never follows our own. How often do we feel that the answer we long for takes too long, as if God were distant or indifferent to our pain? Antonia waited 4 years for the dream to come true, and each day of waiting seemed to carry the weight of doubt and restlessness. But those years were not empty. They were not God's silence. They were years of preparation, of quiet growth, each moment shaping the promise so it could appear at the perfect time. The delay, as painful as it was, revealed a greater wisdom than human eyes can see. In those years, the heart learns to trust in a new way. Waiting does not mean God has forgotten. It means He is shaping every detail, aligning circumstances, preparing hearts, strengthening souls. Every moment becomes an invitation to deepen faith, to see that life is not only about immediate answers, but about learning, growing, and being transformed. Anxiety fades when we understand that God's rhythm cannot be rushed, that every promise has its perfect hour. It is like a seed hidden beneath the soil, unseen, working silently to grow strong before breaking through the earth. What looks like delay is really care, design, and faithfulness. When Francesca and Michel finally came, it was not by chance. It was the fulfillment of a process that could happen only in its exact time. In the waiting, doubt was turned into trust, uncertainty into assurance, and life revealed once more that God always keeps His promises, even when weary hearts have stopped believing. Even after Carlo's passing, His presence continued to fill his mother's life in a deep, transforming way. Antonia began to notice that every gesture, every word, every decision carried a strength that transcended physical absence. Her grief, though heavy and enduring, was no longer just suffering. It was reshaped into strength, into a channel for carrying forward what Carlo had begun. Her son's mission lived on in small yet powerful details, guiding her choices, inspiring her actions, keeping the flame of faith alive. Every act of hers seemed in tune with what he had planted, as though Carlo's life still moved through her, unseen yet real. This experience showed that the calling entrusted by God is not lost when someone we love departs. It adapts, it transforms, it finds new paths. Antonia began to notice opportunities to serve, to share, to evangelize, opportunities she might once have overlooked. Carlo's absence was not complete emptiness, but space for her to become an instrument of his continuing mission. She discovered that the love once confined by grief had the strength to move mountains, to touch hearts, to awaken new lives. Every word, every gesture, every glance of hers carried her son's legacy, proving that death cannot erase the impact of a life lived with purpose. It is like Moses, who, after losing everything he knew, discovered his true calling in the desert. Antonia came to see that her pain was not only something to endure, but a doorway opening to new horizons, to vocations revealed in the quiet of the heart. Every step she took, every choice she made, carried the love and faith of Carlo forward, a continuation of his mission that reached beyond time and space. Her son's legacy revealed itself this way, unseen to those who do not believe, but unmistakable to those who know that life can become an instrument of the divine, that absence can be transformed into presence, and that the mission of a pure heart can grow far beyond what one can imagine. The dreams Carlo brought to his mother carried a silent but profound teaching, a kind of tender classroom God seems to use to guide those we love. Each dream became a lesson, offering truths too heavy to absorb when awake, but delivered with gentleness, opening space for reflection and inner change. Antonia had to learn to trust these signs, even when human logic doubted, even when waiting and sorrow made everything seem impossible. With every dream, another layer of understanding unfolded, showing that life and faith are never limited to what the eyes can see. These nighttime encounters held messages that went beyond simple words. They called for interpretation, for attentiveness, for sensitivity. Carlo appeared with guidance, with consolation, with memories pointing to truths his mother could not yet grasp fully in the daylight. Each dream was a living parable, an invitation to see beyond absence, to realize that the divine reveals itself in quiet yet powerful ways, and that the soul can learn and be transformed when it surrenders to such experiences. It is like solving riddles that reveal themselves only to those willing to listen deeply. God's teaching through dreams is never forced, never immediate, it is an invitation. It challenges our narrow view of reality, showing that what seems unfinished or inexplicable carries a higher meaning. Antonia realized that by welcoming these dreams, her heart opened wider, her faith grew deeper, and her vision of life expanded. Each message was a key, unlocking new perspectives, reviving hope, and turning grief into lessons of courage and a living faith strong enough to carry on Carlo's mission. Carlo did not stop at death. He continued as guide and revealer. His presence crossed the distance between him and his mother, reminding her that no grave could sever their bond. Each gesture remembered, each whisper in a dream carried comfort, direction, and hope. Antonia discovered that even in physical absence, she could sense a living companionship, one that guided choices, softened her pain, and turned mourning into wisdom. Carlo's passing was not an ending, but a transition into a presence woven into daily life, into memory, into the heart that loves. This continuity grew especially clear when she realized she could glimpse eternity in the ordinary. Everyday life began to carry reflections of the divine, and even the smallest moments were filled with a sense of greater purpose. Carlo became a teacher to his mother, showing her that true consolation is not the absence of pain, but the awareness that life transcends what is visible. Just as Christ, after the resurrection, continued to comfort his disciples, Carlo revealed that presence multiplies when we recognize the love that never dies. The journey brought her to a profound revelation. Grief can become mission, and absence can multiply into presence. Carlo became like a star disappearing below the horizon, yet his light still brightened his mother's sky and the lives of all touched by his witness. Every memory, every word, every gesture treasured in heart or mind reminded her that real life is eternal, that bonds of love do not vanish, and that a legacy of faith can cross generations. Antonia came to see she was not merely living with longing, but living with the continued presence of a son who, even beyond death, keeps teaching, guiding, and shining light. As she reflected on the whole journey, Antonia began to understand how Carlo turned every absence into presence and every silence into a lesson. He was not only a memory, he became an instrument of renewal, proving that true love keeps acting even when the body is gone. Every gesture, every message carried in dreams bore a subtle wisdom, to look at life with depth, to notice signs often overlooked, and to discover that eternity shows itself in the simplest daily choices. This new awareness gave her an intimacy with the divine that once felt far away. Carlo's death, instead of closing doors, opened windows of understanding. She saw that every hardship, every ache of longing was also a chance for growth, for reflection, for transformation. Her son's presence, though invisible, revealed itself in every detail, in every decision shaped by courage and faith. He taught her that life does not end with departure. It continues in ways that stretch beyond logic, beyond what the mind can grasp. In the end, Carlo's story showed that absence can become a bridge, that longing can be turned into mission, and that the sorrow of loss can uncover strength we never knew we had. He became his mother's teacher, not only for who he was in life, but for who he continues to be in every action, every memory, every inspiration left in the hearts of those who loved him. Like a star dipping beneath the horizon yet still lighting the night, Carlo keeps guiding, comforting, and transforming, reminding us that true presence transcends what is seen, what is bound by time, what is finite, leaving an eternal mark on those willing to feel and to learn from his legacy. As Antonia looked back over it all, she realized that every experience with Carlo, from the dreams to his constant unseen presence, carried a teaching power, shaping and transforming her. Her son had become her master, showing her that learning does not stop with physical presence. Every memory, every word, every gesture etched in her heart taught love, hope, faith, and resilience. She came to see that suffering was not empty, but a chance to connect more deeply with what lies beyond the everyday. Carlo's absence had become a living presence, a quiet guide shaping her thoughts, her actions, her spirit. The unfolding of his legacy revealed that death, however painful, is not an absolute end. Instead, it made room for a new kind of communion, where her son kept offering lessons, comfort, and direction. Every moment lived with his memory reminded her that true love does not vanish, it changes form. She began to see that his mission reached beyond his earthly life, that his actions, even after death, continued to inspire, to console, and to strengthen the faith of those who remained. As Antonia reflected on this journey, she realized that the grief she carried could be transformed into strength and purpose, and that physical absence could become multiplied presence. Carlo became like a star, distant on the horizon, yet continually lighting the path for his mother and for all who opened their hearts to his witness. Every memory, every gesture of faith, every word echoing in her mind served as a light that travels across time and space, reaffirming that life and love exist in dimensions beyond the visible, manifesting in the heart and continuing to teach, guide, and transform. Looking back on her experiences with Carlo, Antonia saw that the dreams, memories, and subtle manifestations of her son were, in truth, a form of divine teaching. Each night brought lessons that her waking mind could scarcely comprehend. Carlo became a silent teacher, showing her that life extends beyond death and that true love knows no temporal boundaries. Every gesture, every word spoken in dreams, every memory held in her heart carried guidance that awakened faith, courage, and hope, teaching her to find meaning even in the darkest moments. His presence grew even more evident as Antonia noticed the small details of everyday life seeming to carry signs, as if Carlo continued to guide her choices and ease her pain. She saw that death was not an absolute end, but a passage allowing new forms of communication and learning. The bond between mother and son was not broken. It transformed, keeping Carlo's mission alive and inspiring actions that extended beyond physical reach. Every memory became a tool for growth, every recollection a lesson in life. In the end, Antonia understood that physical absence could be turned into multiplied presence, and that grief could become purpose and mission. Carlo became a star whose light continues to illuminate, guide, and console, even from afar. Every act of love, every invisible teaching, crosses time and space, showing that the legacy of a pure heart does not end with death. Life continues to reveal itself in subtle, silent, and powerful ways, reminding her that true presence does not rely on the body, but on the depth of love and faith that remain alive. Reflecting on all she experienced with Carlo, she realized his presence transcends time and space. He did not stop with death. He continued to guide, comfort, and teach in ways she could never have imagined. Each memory, each dream, every recollection of his voice or gaze, even held silently in her heart, became a living lesson. Death, which once seemed an absolute end, revealed itself as a transition, opening a space for a deeper and ongoing connection between them. This experience taught her that true love does not fade with physical absence. On the contrary, it multiplies, transforms into mission, and becomes a bridge between the visible and the invisible. Carlo showed her how to see eternity in the ordinary, to recognize that every simple daily gesture, every choice, every moment of reflection carries a spiritual dimension that had once gone unnoticed. He became a silent teacher, showing that presence can exist in ways that do not depend on the body, but on the intensity of love and faith that remain alive. In the end, she understood that grief can be transformed into purpose, and absence into multiplied presence. Carlo is like a star that disappears below the horizon, yet whose light continues to illuminate her life and the lives of all who allow themselves to be touched by his witness. Every memory, every gesture of love, every invisible teaching travels across time, remaining a guide, a comfort, and an inspiration. He taught her that true life is eternal, that love transcends death, and that even in absence, it is possible to keep learning, growing, and feeling the strength of one who has gone, yet never truly left.